Welcome to Curiosity, Not Judgment. I'm Birga.
I'm Gary.
So, want to talk about mentoring today. This is I think, a very important topic and one that I've thought about a lot over the years, and one that you're very passionate about as well.
Very passionate.
So, a number of years ago, I was serving in a nonprofit role as an executive director, and it was the first time I'd been in that role. And I recognized very quickly that I needed a mentor. And boy, did I have a hard time finding somebody. Because I felt like it was important that I meet with a woman. There was something about just I don't know, the very personal nature of a mentorship relationship where I felt like I wanted to just be paired with a woman rather than with a man. I'm not criticizing anybody who chooses otherwise, but for me, that was the choice that I wanted to make. And to find a woman who had the time and the space to mentor me was next to impossible. I couldn't believe how hard it was for me to find somebody.
That's a very interesting one. And I do believe that it's important that men mentor men and women mentor women just because of the perspective and a myriad other reasons. And it's disappointing to me that you had a hard time finding one. It's something that I insist all of my kids do, is have a mentor at their early age, and then to turn around and be a mentor. It doesn't take much to be a mentor, and there is a lot of opportunities in our world today to be mentors. Especially during COVID, as people isolated and moved online, so to speak, and as we've been generally doing that with social media, etc. I feel like a lot of people's mentor is, Twitter or Instagram. And I see you shaking your head.
Right.
That's a bad thing. I think we would all agree that there needs to be one-on-one mentoring that occurs. And throughout history, we used to call it apprenticeship. We used to call it different things, but we had one-on-one mentors.
Yeah.
Whether you were learning to be a cowboy or a smith or anything, you had a given path that you would go so that you could learn from someone who's kind of been there, done that.
Right.
Why don't we have those formal systems anymore?
I don't know. And it's interesting to me that it becomes really difficult to submit yourself to that vulnerability of mentorship because we've become so I don't know, isolating. We've become so self-directed, self fill in the blank with the second half of that word, that we don't really like people to speak into our lives in that manner. And there is something that's a little bit intimidating about having somebody challenge your thought process. And the reason why I was shaking my head about the Instagram, Twitter comment is because we have had this conversation. You go down that rabbit hole, you're going to just continue to perpetuate your own thought process. Never are you going to be challenged to think outside of your norm. And where's the growth and development in that?
No, it's very clear that the algorithms of social media are going to support your current thinking. That's not what you want out of a mentorship. I know what my current thoughts are, and I need to be exposed to different ones.
Yeah.
And a mentor is someone that you can bounce ideas off of. It's somebody who has can point out the quicksand.
Yeah.
Can point out, there's a myriad things you can try. This one's probably not a good one, and those are so important these days because and I think mentorship with respect to values and interest in public service and things like that are lost causes. It used to be a large percentage of people were in Boy Scouts or were in other things. And now I've been a mentor, I've been a big brother in the Big Brother program, and I really believe in that. And I think that that's the kind of thing that would prevent some of the tragedies that we see today. And indeed, even let's start with something as simple as academic performance. The long-term studies show that the big correlation between a child's performance academically all the way through college, the big stick on the Pareto, is not socioeconomic, the schools they went to, or anything else. And we kind of know this from our own experience. It's It's an adult's interest in their academic performance. Now, hopefully that's a parent, but if it's not, it's an adult. We've all heard the stories and maybe experienced the teacher that really helped us out in school, or the neighbor that was there when our father or our parents couldn't be, or because we chose that we were getting along with our parents and this other mentor stepped in. It's super important to have mentors, to have a mentor and be a mentor as a lifelong process.
So let's go back a step and really define what this is. And I think this is important because when I think of mentor, I think of a very purposeful relationship where I've approached somebody or someone's approached me and says, this is the relationship I want to enter into. It's kind of a contractual thing. Is it that formal? Does it need to be that formal? Or are you more talking about kind of any person of influence who can speak into your life?
It's a great question. Let's start with, philosophically with the question that you often get asked whenever you're going through some kind of a process of finding, your values or your purpose or anything like that. A lot of people will ask you when they start that process, who is somebody that you really look up to?
Mm-hmm.
And, and I've been through that process and I've always thought about that and thought, well, there's not one person that I want to become.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that I want certain attributes of them. So in my definition of mentorship and in my experience, it is finding someone who can help you in an area of life where you want to grow.
And
Go ahead.
Does that person need to be older than you?
No, definitely not. So I'll give you a great example. I've been asked to be on a very important board in New Mexico, and the chair of the board and I were having a conversation, and he asked how I met this person, and I said, well, what happened was I'm an engineer, and I was getting into the medical field because of the situation with my own mother, and I wanted to start a company, which we later ended up doing, and I said, but I don't know anything about the medical business. So I asked my dad. I said, hey, do you know anybody who's big in the medical business? And he goes, as a matter of fact, I do. And I said, well, let's go have lunch. So I had lunch with my dad and this person that it was his friend. And then I was my dad's son, and this guy brought along his son. His son was already big in the medical business and was younger than me. Mm. We are friends to this day. We were just talking last week. Anyway, the point is, I ended up learning a ton. And at one point, we were even in, quote unquote competitors. And we came up to say to each other, we would say to other people, we are co-opetition with each other. We help each other out. And we think both of our pies got bigger as a result of helping each other out. And that person was younger than me, but he had an expertise in an area that I did not.
Mm. So I think that's maybe our first marker, right, in the curiosity, not judgment scale here. So you need to find somebody who has the skills that you are wanting to grow in, and you've got to kind of let down that judgment shield that says, well, what is there for me to learn from somebody half my age, or this kid's young enough to be my grandson,
sure,
or whatever the statement is, right? Mm-hmm. To let down that judgment guard and to start asking the curious questions. What can I learn?
What can I learn? And I tell you, not only what can I learn, how can I add value? I tell you, I used to do a course in entrepreneurship through Sandia National Labs, had an arm called TVC, which was in charge of taking technologies from the labs and bringing them into commercialization, into the commercial world, into the business world. And so we did this course. It was a 6-month course. Every couple of weeks, we would do a certain topic on how to become an entrepreneur. And I had a lot of people come up to me after the class and whatever subject I was teaching on, and say, hey, could I get a meeting with you? Could I get a cup of coffee? And I said, sure, you can buy me a cup of coffee. I didn't need them to buy me a cup of coffee, but they need to have some skin in the game. Yeah. And then, and the ones that I kept doing, I met with a lot of people once, but the ones that really had an impact, and I had an impact on them, I'll never forget a young man named Luis who came up to me afterwards, and he wanted to start a gym. And he did the exact right thing. The next time, after we had coffee, he called me a couple of weeks later, and he said, hey, Gary, I wanted to have another cup of coffee. And I said, yeah, why? And he says, well, here's what you told me. Here's what I did, and
Mm,
I've got some more questions.
great.
Uh, how do you say no to that?
Yeah.
So I became his mentor. He did end up starting that gym. It's been very successful, and we're also friends.
So, was there ever some sort of a formal conversation to establish that relationship?
No, I mean he kept wanting to buy me coffee, and I kept enjoying the conversations. And now there's nothing against a formal relationship. I think
Sure.
that's great. If you want to just say, hey, look, I want to set some expectations here. I'm going to need some of your time, and I want you to commit to that
Mm,
time. And you could certainly do that if you want to, but people tend to enjoy being together if there's some good progress being made in either or both lives.
mm. I'm now wondering if I approached my whole looking for a mentor thing wrong simply by using that word.
Mm,
Sincerely, like maybe I was approaching it in too formal of a manner when I should have just, hit up a few women that had expertise that I wanted to learn from and say, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?"
right,
Like maybe
right,
maybe I
right,
did it wrong.
right. Well, I mean, look, okay, good. Here's your chance to learn. You don't do it wrong. You never do anything wrong. You do something and then you learn from it, right? I mean,
Mm,
that's the whole point of being an entrepreneur, really. I mean, entrepreneur, everybody thinks entrepreneur means, start a business. What it means is from the French that means literally to take action.
mm,
And if you've got an idea and and you think it's a good one, I think it's good to start down that path and take action. A company may not come out of it, but the process by which you investigate how to turn that passion into a business, a profit, is always a good one, regardless if it becomes a business or not.
mm.
And part of that is learning from people who've done it before.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're repeating a bunch of mistakes, and it's okay to have mistakes. What you want to do, it's like parenting, lots of little mistakes, no fatal errors, right?
Yeah.
And so because that's the way you do anything in life that's worthwhile.
Yeah. So let's flip the tables for a moment and let's assume that you've gotten to a point and a stage in your career where you feel like you've got something to give back. How do you begin the process of finding somebody to pour into?
Whether or not people are seeking you out or not, I think that I think becoming aware of when people are asking you to mentor them, even if they're not using the words, is the first step.
Okay.
Because I would submit that many people are.
Mm,
They're looking for your time, and you're either acting or actually overtly stating that you're too busy for them.
mm,
I can picture in my head many times when I walked by somebody who was kind of doing this, and I was on to my next appointment and didn't have time.
mm.
Um,
And for those people listening rather than watching, the motion of like, hey, can I get your attention? Right.
yeah, right, right. And I think so first of all, become aware that there's probably some people who'd like to have some time, starting with your own family, and then moving forward is a good thing. And by the way, mentoring your own family and that's something you don't use the word,
Right.
because your teenager doesn't want to hear that you're
Right.
mentoring. No,
Let's sit down for our weekly
exactly.
mentorship
That's not going to
session.
work.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not going
Not
to
at
work.
all.
But your number one job as a parent is to mentor your
Mm,
children, right? And to get them to a place where they are full of awe and wonder about the world, and they want to go pursue their
mm,
passions, and not just pursuing their passions is almost cliche these days. Go do stuff and then figure out as you go what interests you and do more of that,
mm,
right? Is what I tell kids. And I'll also say that, there's what you're gonna do in 20 years probably hasn't been invented yet.
mm.
So just don't worry about finding the perfect thing. Just go start doing something.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about before, if you're looking for a position, go out in the community and start volunteering, and one probably will occur. But the point is, as you're going along, I think there's many opportunities for mentorship
Mhm.
on a micro, middle, and macro level, formal relationship or not.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that you have already done in your life that somebody else could benefit from.
Sure.
So, A, understand that you can benefit others, even in some small way. B, look for people who are asking for help, because we often ignore unless we get an overt ask,
Mm,
even though the signs are there, if we would pay attention and look to them.
yeah.
And then C, There are ways to find mentors. My goodness, you call down to the Big Brothers Big Sisters office, guarantee
I'll
they'll take
snap
you.
you up. Yeah.
And there are several levels these days. You
Mm.
don't have to be a big brother like I was, where you're meeting with your kid. It's supposed to be once a month. We started meeting almost weekly, and I became, an assistant scoutmaster in their troop and all that. I mean, there's levels of engagement. They've got now mentorship 2.0 or something, where you just meet like once a month with a child in school. And again, it's just that adult interaction from
Yeah.
time to time that makes such a difference. My wife was a teacher in school, and we got the question all the time about, our failing schools, and what do we, why aren't our schools? And my answer to them was, what kid are you helping to go read in a reading program? What kid are you mentoring and bringing under your arm to move forward? Because without that and that support, it doesn't matter the school system. The child has a high probability of failure.
Mm. I want to ask a question because I know this to be true in my own life, that I tend to attract a certain type of person. And I'm wondering if that is universal based on everybody's respective personality. And oftentimes the personalities that I will attract, individuals who want my time, are those that have had a high level of trauma in their life. And there's lots and lots of pain and just anguish. And so some of these conversations end up being very involved, very long, and very draining sometimes. And so how do you be curious about your opportunity to speak into somebody's life while I want to say setting safeguards. I want to be cautious with how I'm projecting this,
Sure.
but there are times when absolutely this can become kind of overwhelming, and it can deplete you from things that you need for your immediate family and your immediate sphere as well.
Okay, well, let's go down this road. There was a movie called The Secret many years ago.
Okay.
And the whole secret to the secret was that you become or you attract to yourself things and people based on what you sit and think about all day long.
Ooh.
And
I don't feel like that's true in this case, but go ahead.
it's not true. It was a big, okay, it's partially true. The big movements in life have a kernel of truth, and then it's expanded in sometimes wrong ways. In my experience, the people and things that you attract into your life are not based about what you think about all day long. It's based on who you are, and it's based on how you project your passions
Mm,
and your purpose.
okay.
And as you project, then people respond to that as a relationship interaction, and then will respond. As a matter of fact, whenever I'm going to start a new company, I just start talking about that passionate thing I'm about all the time. And I'm not looking for employees to hire out of Indeed. I'm looking for the people who react strongly to what I say I'm passionate about. The people I want working in this organization are people that, when I say, wow, I'm really passionate about PV and solar and distributed storage, because that's the way the grid is going to function in the future. And people go, wow, I want to be a part of that. I agree with you, this and this and this and this. And even if they've thought about it tangentially, that's even better, because they think differently than I do, but they're passionate about that same thing.
Mm,
So my point is, as we project our
yeah.
passions and purpose and personality, which, by the way, that becomes your personality,
Right.
right? I used to do a thing on 6 Ps, and the end is your personality. As that's projected, that's what you attract.
Mm.
Now, you attract people who want to tell you deep secrets because you're honest, you're vulnerable, you're trustworthy,
And I
and
want
you're
people made well.
and you wear that.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so and now and I'm working on becoming a little bit more like that. My projection is somebody who's going to get something done.
Right.
I'm very organized. I'm going to get a lot accomplished in my life, and I'm going to go 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 go. Well, that's intimidating to some people.
Yeah.
They're not even going to approach me with their problem because I don't have time.
Mm, yeah. So this is a fascinating conversation that went much different than I was anticipating up front, but it's good. Staying curious about where this is going to lead so that we learn as we go. So, all right, we're then at the place where we can look for opportunity to pour into others as a mentor. We can look for others to be mentored by, regardless of age. And you touched on the subject matter of it being so critically important to have that mentorship relationship with students. But I want to explore that for a few minutes, just a little bit more deeply, because if the world was perfect and everyone was able to step into their parental role in an ideal fashion, parents would be the one to surround their child, to help them with homework, to do all these different things. But there are broken families, there are life circumstances, there are situations in which that natural relationship is not a strong one, or there's not a good bond. And your emphasis on how important it is for a child to find a trusting adult to care about aspects of their life, I think we have to hit on again and just really say, can we be curious about the children in our circle of influence in terms of what opportunity do we have to speak into them to help them succeed?
Every time we have an interaction with a child, it's an
Mm,
opportunity to speak into their lives, whether it's by example or whether it's by words, whether it's by just being there and listening with no judgment sometimes.
mm-hmm.
And look, I'm not going to criticize anybody for where they are in their journey.
Sure.
But if you're a parent and you're wondering what you should do, and you did not have mentoring as a parent, that chain was broken,
Mm-hmm.
well, then that's a really good indication that you need to find someone that's going to be a mentor to you parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that you can be totally honest with, somebody who knows everything about you, but likes you anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and is willing to say, man, I just got so frustrated with little Sally or little Johnny the other day. I just wanted to smack them upside the head and lock them in the room till they're 18. That's something that every parent has felt.
Mm.
And that's okay. Now, whether you do something about it or not, and what you do is a different story.
Right.
How can you, every parent needs somebody in their life that they can go to talk about those kinds of
Yeah.
things. And if you don't have a two parent, often in a two parent situation, you can talk to each other, you can work it out. There's lots of parenting courses out there. I went to a bunch.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I was concerned about whether I could accomplish the task. It's because I thought I might learn one other new technique that would help me in the mentoring and raising of my children.
Yeah.
And we talked about the old joke of what does it take to raise children, and the guy who's stressed out on the plane and with his one child, and this guy is very calm, and he says, well, you must not have children. And the guy goes, I've got 7 children. He says, well, how can you be calm? I mean, and he says, well, there's just 3 rules to raise children, right? It's just, you set very, very clear boundaries based on the values of your tribe, your family, and you have consequences that are commensurate to those, and you consistently apply them for 18 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then you make sure that they know they're loved no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
It's not complicated. It's just hard,
Yeah.
and it's hard to do for 18 years. And if you have a mentor, somebody that can help you do that, that makes that job doable.
Yeah.
If you don't have a mentor, it's a really, really tough job for anyone.
Yeah.
No matter what family situation you're in.
Yeah. I know we're about out of time, but I want to say this because this is a burning passion of mine, is that if you as a parent, and especially as a young parent, if you're feeling overwhelmed, please, please, please ask for help and get connected with a group or even one other person that can help you walk through that difficult season. I I to this day credit a group called MOPS, Mothers of
Mhm.
Preschoolers, for I say saving my life, and I maybe not that dramatically. I was not at a point where I was contemplating self harm, but I was so overwhelmed, and I was so everything was broken to me in that season of raising young kids, and I couldn't see my way out. I didn't understand about postpartum depression, all of these things that I had
Mhm.
not had conversation over, that had I not had this collection of women around me, I don't know what would have happened in my early parenting years. And so I just cannot emphasize enough. If you are feeling overwhelmed as a parent, if you're feeling overwhelmed in any state of life, please reach out for help and look for somebody who you admire, somebody who you think has, maybe got 10 degrees more of their stuff together than you do, and just begin some of those conversations. It might be the lifeline that you need.
And when Birga says 10 degrees, she means out of 100 or 1,000.
Sure.
In other words, just a person who's a step ahead.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be ahead in any kind of judgment way.
Right.
It just isn't somebody who's going to commiserate with you and say, yeah, this is really bad, and do bad things.
Yeah.
Right. It's just somebody who's going to help you in a workout in a positive way, a response that moves the ball forward. And MOPS is a fantastic organization. My wife, when our kids were young, was in MOPS, and one of my daughters went to MOPS. And it's an incredible organization. But that's just one out of 30, 50 in our city at least. And so the reaching out for help is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that before I was, well, let's just say for many more decades than I should have, I would have thought of that as weak. I would have thought of that as absolutely not in my thinking. Now, my wife, thank goodness, wasn't in that realm, and so we did things as parents together. But me as an individual, I had a real hard time reaching out for help, no matter how bad things got. And so that is the key, is reaching out.
Yeah. So mentorship, be one, get one. Is there a third? I don't know.
Be open to it.
Be open to it. Absolutely. Be curious about what the role of mentorship might look like in your life. So, all right, we'll leave it there. And until next time, have a great week.
Take care.